The female gunner mocked in the shot that saved the convoy. They called her Powder Doll. Her first time hauling ammo, she fumbled. Her first test shot missed the mark. Teammates laughed. The commander sneered. No one believed she could do anything. Until that noon, amid real gunfire, burning vehicles, and panicked shouts, she was the only one who dared climb into the gunner's seat, adjust the angle, and pull the trigger. Fort Cavazos, Texas, mid-March. The sky just cleared after a dusty rain. Military tire tracks hardened into cracked cement, like old footprints not yet erased. From a utility transport stepped a group of new soldiers. Backpacks slung over shoulders, helmets in hand, eyes still sharp with the wary edge of those unaccustomed to the smell of artillery. Among them, not standing out for her voice or stature but for an unnatural silence, was a young woman at the back of the line. Rachel Carter. She wore a cap pulled low over her forehead, clutching a thick black notebook, its edges worn and frayed from rainwater. A young soldier whispered to the one beside him, "Tiny thing like that, in artillery." The other smirked. "Must have joined the wrong squad." "Look at those arms, can she even shift gears?" Rachel heard. But she kept her head down and walked on with no reaction. At 28, she just graduated from artillery training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, a place known for brutal tests on range, reload speed, and tactical response. But no one here cared to hear her story. They only saw her slight frame, barely 5'3", pale skin still ghostly from a viral fever that dragged through the final week of her course. She didn't mention the antibiotics she took to finish her last live fire test. Nor did she top her class in calculating range errors against headwinds. Here. Every glance lingered only on her narrow shoulders and untanned arms. Her first time in the gun compartment, she was assigned to Fire Team 3, a crew already prepped on a freshly serviced M109A6 Paladin. No one looked up to greet her, no one smiled, but from the back, a voice drifted, another Powder Doll joining the fight. A low chuckle, brief, then silence as the team leader Sergeant Douglas approached, a two-tour veteran of joint operations in Syria, his face lightly pocked with old scars, his eyes sharp as blades. He tilted his head at Rachel Carter. "Right, yes. Sergeant, you think you can lift a 150 Flagman round, sir? I've done it. No reports, just try." He nodded toward the ammo crate in the corner. Rachel stepped up, gripped the nearly meter-long shell, weighing over 90 pounds. She used the technique she was taught: low center of gravity, straight back, lift from the legs, but on her third step, she slipped. The round crashed to the steel floor with a sharp clang, like metal striking a fractured dream. She stumbled, nearly falling. Another soldier had to grab her to keep her from hitting the wall. The air went still. Then, a whistle. Another. Then laughter. The whole crew roared as if waiting for the moment to erupt. The sergeant pursed his lips. No laugh, but said softly, "You're better suited to passing out cookies." The words hit like a misfired round, no immediate wound, but the aftershock lingered. Rachel stood, said nothing, just bent down, and repositioned the shell. Slower this time. No one helped. During the next day's test fire, she was tasked with adjusting the firing angle from a coordinate map. South wind, 8 miles per hour. The target range is roughly 2,100 yards. The target is a steel plate on a dirt slope. She measured, aligned the sight, and signaled ready. The first shot roared out, kicking up dust nearly 40 meters left of the target. Sergeant Douglas frowned, arms crossed. From behind, whispers spread fast. "Missed like that, a blind guy could do better." Wind must have blown her thoughts away. Laughter broke out, And there was no restraint this time. No one hid their disappointment. No one expected her to hit the mark, they just waited to be proven right. She didn't turn to look. Just quietly picked up her notebook, jotted down the measurements, and walked to the ammo bay as if nothing had happened. No one knew. She heard every word, but chose not to let it linger in her voice. She kept it in her eyes. Nights at Fort Cavazos were never fully dark, with pale yellow light from the supply sheds casting weak halos on the cold, rough cement. The wind whistled through the barbed wire fences, a faint metallic murmur like tired steel whispering. On the first night after her failed test fire, Rachel sat alone outside Ammo Shed 4, a place no one bothered with unless assigned. She perched on an empty ammo crate, her back against the icy tin wall. Her hands, still smeared with grease, bore the stubborn black mix of gun oil from hours of cleaning barrels and checking loaders. She didn't bother wiping them, just wrapped an old cloth around her palm and sat still. No sighs, no curses, no complaints, just silence, the safest shelter she'd learned long ago. From the next shed over, laughter spilled out. If she hits a target, I'll crawl around the drill field in my underwear, a private voice boomed, louder than needed. Nah, I'll bet my sidearm, what if she even grazes the edge of a plate? I'm switching to logistics. Roars of laughter erupted like gunfire, echoing under the hollow metal roof of the barracks. Rachel heard it all, every word, every jab. But she didn't stand, didn't turn. She just flipped open her black notebook, squinting under the dim light. She began to write. Angle 1.8 degrees left, wind speed 8 mappa, southeast, error 37 meters, cause slow alignment plus failure to adjust elevation. Below, she sketched a small arrow showing the angle's drift. Beneath that, in slanted blue ink. Not the gun's fault. It's the eyes and hands and uneven breathing. She closed her eyes for a moment, gripping the notebook as if holding a fading heartbeat. No one knew that from that night. Rachel started waking 2 hours earlier each day. She didn't log it with the unit, didn't ask permission, and didn't bring anyone along. At 3 a.m., when the guard posts changed and the barracks slept, she quietly opened the door to the simulation range behind Training Field 2. An old training paladin sat there, with no live rounds and no full mechanics, but enough to practice. She hauled dummy shells herself, her hands trembling as she crossed the sandy threshold. The first time, she nearly collapsed under the weight. But she stood again, a second time, a third, until her gloves tore between thumb and forefinger. Then came the scope adjustments. She learned to feel the slight jolt when turning the crank, aligning the sight to the terrain. Each miss, she noted. She didn't follow the manual but wrote in her own terms. In dry weather, the vehicle bounces more. Wet ground, the round lags half a beat. One freezing night with strong east winds. She tied a scarf around her head and sat in the old gun compartment for 2 hours just to sense how the metal chilled with each breath. She practiced adjusting range by ear alone, no scope training instinct. By the second week, her hands bled. A bolt pinched her knuckles while twisting the loader, blood seeping through her glove's fabric and crusting under gun grease. She didn't bandage it, just rinsed it with water she'd brought. No one knew, and she meant to keep it that way. The next morning, in formation, Rachel stood at the back, as always, silent. Someone smirked when she tilted her neck, sore from her shoulders. Dream of hitting the target last night, powder doll. She didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the distance, where the simulated hills rose like a faint scar on the landscape, where, the night before, she'd aligned the crosshairs on target 4 under the pale moonlight. No explosive charge, but the soft click of the firing pin locking into place was, to her, louder than any laughter. Only she heard it, and that was enough. Time at Fort Cavazos wasn't counted in days or hours. Everything cycled the siren, drills on scorching sand, quick meals under flickering fluorescent lights, and rest periods where everyone just wanted to collapse and forget the gunpowder dust. However, for Rachel, time was measured by the degrees of error after each barrel adjustment. Every early morning was a chance not to prove anything to others but to fix what she hadn't yet mastered. For the next 2 weeks, she woke before the sentries, before the sun grazed the barracks' tin roofs. She was at the training range. The old paladin became her silent companion, asking no questions, offering no mockery. She learned to pivot the gun in 2 crisp motions, cutting her steps from 7 to 4. Her right shoulder ached from repetition, but she didn't stop. Each morning, she picked a different simulated terrain, high mounds, headwinds stinging her face, and low vantage points prone to misaligned shots. She measured, estimated, adjusted the scope, and then measured again. When the wind shifted suddenly, she tied a cloth over her eyes, gauging it by ear and instinct. Once, she closed her eyes and pressed 2 fingers to the icy metal barrel, counting seconds as if listening for the gun to breathe with her. Every failure, she recorded, no erasing, no editing, no excuses. She wrote it all. Axis off due to shoulder tilt. Wind shifted 1.3 degrees in 6 seconds. Breathe unevenly while holding aim. Blue ink lines filled her black notebook, growing daily like a quiet diary of her body and her skill. One overcast morning, drizzling, she was wiping the scope's lens when soft footsteps approached. She turned to see an older man. Gray hair streaked, his technician's jacket faded with years. Sergeant Hank Murrow, a 20-year artillery mechanic, was reserved and rarely chatty outside duty. He didn't ask what she was doing, didn't act surprised. He just watched for a few seconds, then dropped a folded scrap of paper onto the gun's surface. It was an old, faded target map, its markings nearly gone. Only a few rough pencil lines remained, showing hourly wind directions and range adjustments. He spoke softly, almost a whisper, as if not to wake the sleeping cannon. "It's all in reading the wind. Keep practicing." Then he walked off, not waiting for thanks. Rachel stared at the map for a long time, then folded it carefully. She didn't ask why he gave it to her. Didn't show it off. She just tucked it into her left jacket pocket, under the fabric near her heart. From that day, she added a new drill cross-checking real-time winds against the old map. Sometimes they differed, and sometimes they matched. Each match made her press her lips tight, no smile, just a small red mark in her notebook, not for bragging, but to remind herself hitting right wasn't luck. It was patience meeting understanding. She told no one about those mornings. Didn't post on the unit board. Didn't ask teammates if they noticed her change. Even in group drills, when assigned minor tasks, she worked quietly, not faster, not showy, just precise, enough, and correct. In the unit, the laughter lingered behind her, the skeptical glances, the half-joking barbs when she passed by. Powder doll up early today dreaming of being a sharpshooter. She didn't reply, but her hand, gripping the gun's control yoke, tightened as if holding something deeper than reflex. No one noticed the very scorn seemed to quietly strengthen her each day. Not to answer them, but to ensure the cannon never waited for someone else to dare pull the trigger. That noon, the sun blazed like fire over the dirt road in Crawford Valley, a narrow strip of land between 2 barren hills in southern Texas. where sparse trees clung to life and dust swirled behind every military tire. Rachel's unit was tasked with escorting a supply convoy, 6 Humvees loaded with ammo and food, heading from base to a northern field outpost. A simple mission, rated low risk in the ops plan. Rachel was on the last vehicle, seated at the secondary gun, a backup post on the second Paladin's turret, meant for observation or light support if needed. In truth, she was placed there not for skill or strategy, but to simply be present. A token seat for someone no one yet trusted. She stayed silent, watched her teammates chat over the internal radio. One cracked a joke about missing a paper target back at Fort Sill. Another chewed gum, eyes half closed with boredom. No one mentioned danger. No one noticed the odd thicket ahead, until the first explosion roared. Boom! The lead Humvee erupted in smoke, its front end hurled upward like a wounded beast. The convoy screeched to a halt in panic, rear tires skidding on dry sand. Dust and smoke choked the air, blurring the horizon ahead. Before anyone could process it, a hail of bullets tore from the left hillside. Machine guns rattled, their rounds hammering the steel hulls with a chilling rhythm. Shots skimmed the ground, slamming into the second vehicle's tail, freezing the convoy in the narrow pass. No way forward, no way back. Panic gripped the unit. Drivers dove into their cabins. The primary gun crew in the lead vehicle locked their hatch, pressing against steel walls, no one daring to peek out. The radio crackled with heavy breathing, broken orders, and strained curses. Rachel didn't wait for her name. She ducked, unlatched the gunner's safety, and slid into the firing seat, her body pressed to the narrow scope. Her hands grazed the controls, eyes wide, missing nothing through the dust-fogged lens. On the western hill's edge, she saw them, shadowy figures behind a dirt mound. An ambush team, 3 gunners, 2 M249s braced on stands, wide firing angle, high vantage point, perfect to pin the convoy. Her eyes locked on the smoke still rising from the lead Humvee. The wind blew against it, meaning a shot could use the haze to obscure the enemy's view. A slim gap opened through the smoke and dust, just enough for one clean round. Behind her, a shout, "Rachel, get down, wait for the commander." She didn't turn. Her hand gripped the control yoke. Another voice. No orders, don't fire, but they didn't see the hilltop machine guns needed only seconds to reload. Waiting would turn the trailing vehicles into moving targets. Her eyes didn't blink. The scope sharpened a cloth tied around an enemy's wrist, a radio blinking red, and a gust bending the tall grass in front of her. Rachel eased the gun's yoke, adjusting it 1.7 degrees like those lone mornings on the range. Wind 8 mop, northeast. Range 1,800 yards, drift 0.3 left. Mind and muscle knew the drill, like rewriting a familiar sentence. No thought is needed, she whispered, unsure for whom or just to steady herself. Angle, good. Wind, good. Fire. She pulled the trigger. The cannon's roar cracked the air, echoing through the narrow pass like thunder in daylight. The round tore forward, leaving a thin trail of smoke and the sharp scent of gunpowder still hanging. No one in the convoy reacted. They were all holding their breath. The echo of the first shot hadn't fully faded when everything seemed to freeze for a beat. No one was sure what they'd seen through the dust and smoke. But that sharp, resounding blast, the deep, unmistakable thud of a shell hitting its mark, couldn't be mistaken. On the western hillside, where the ambush had fired minutes before, black smoke churned upward. A chunk of the mound was gouged out. Wooden barricades and the M249 mounts were now just twisted steel strewn down the grassy slope. No more gunfire, no more shadows lurking. Everything went silent. In the turret of Paladin 2, Rachel held her position. Her hand rested on the control yoke, Her eyes stayed glued to the scope, tracing the impact point as if to confirm it wasn't a mirage. A deep breath passed through her chest, then another. Behind her, those who'd shouted, "Get down," fell silent. The internal radio went quiet. The entire unit seemed to lose its voice in the taut seconds of the firefight. Then, suddenly, a voice broke through. She hit it. Another louder, cracking with disbelief. She nailed the shot, a cheer, then two. Even the main gun crew lifted their heads from the driver's bay, their eyes wide with unguarded shock. Sweat still streaked their faces, not yet dried, but no one laughed like before. Gone were the mocking smirks that greeted Rachel's every step into the gun bay. And then, the commander's radio crackled through static. "Ambush neutralized. Convoy secure. Proceed." A simple, curt order, but to everyone present, it snapped reality back into place as if the ambush had never happened. Yet all knew without that shot, the outcome would have been different. A few soldiers leaped from their vehicles, rushing to the damaged Humvee to check for casualties. Others loaded defensive rounds, scanning the perimeter as protocol demanded. No orders are needed, no reminders. All moved in sync as if a silent command had passed without radio waves. Rachel, she hadn't left her post. She slowly removed her ear guards, set them aside, and leaned down to wipe the scope with a small cloth tucked in her chest pocket. A familiar motion, but slower this time. Gentler. Her hands still trembled slightly, the aftershock of handling the gun and firing at full intensity. But her eyes, they didn't waver. Those eyes had endured hundreds of quiet training hours, nights of scraped hands without a single complaint, and countless slights without retaliation. A young soldier approached, mouth opening to say something, but Rachel was already stepping down from the turret. She said nothing, just bent to pick up a spent shell casing behind the vehicle, brushed off the dust, and slipped it into her tool pouch. Then she turned, tightened her helmet strap, and walked toward the formation. Each step is heavy but steady, like the shot that had just been fired, and it needs no explanation or validation. In the distance, the dust began to settle. On the hillside, sunlight poured down, no longer blocked by gun barrels or lurking eyes. The wind still blew, but this time, it carried a lighter sound, the weighty silence of a truth proven. No proclamation is needed, no fanfare, just one shell on target. And all the silence before suddenly held meaning. As the convoy pressed through the narrow road's remains, tires crunching over spent shells and scorched earth, no one in the unit laughed like they had that morning. Over the radio, the commander's voice cut through. Brief situation contained. Maintain formation and withdraw north. Prioritize supply cargo. No one in the gun crew spoke. Only glances quiet, heavy, drifted toward the young woman standing by the cannon that had just fired. Rachel Carter, the one called Powder Doll that morning, now crouched, wiping the dark metal barrel, its surface still marked with fresh gunpowder streaks. The lead gun crew's commander, Sergeant Douglas, approached. His usual brisk stride faltered, hesitating before he spoke. One hand scratched the back of his neck, his eyes avoiding hers. "Good work. I was wrong about you." Rachel paused, but didn't look up. She wiped the barrel once more, then set the rag down. Her gaze stayed forward, her voice neither loud nor soft, but she didn't respond. "No, thank you, no. Just doing my duty." She didn't need to say it. There was no need to say anything. For her, the moment the shell left the barrel, cutting through the wind to hit the calculated mark, was answer enough. That afternoon, as the convoy rolled on, the chatter behind her shifted. No more laughter, no more jabs. Just silence, the kind that carried acknowledgement. And if anyone thought to shake her hand or offer a sip of water in thanks, Rachel kept her distance, not to be proud because she knew that what she needed was never an apology. Dusk fell fast over the West Texas hills. The wind turned cold, whipping thin dust across the supply crates. When the unit returned to the barracks, scarfing down hot rations in the lit mess hall, Rachel slipped away to the ammo shed. She sat on the familiar old crate, her refuge through covert training nights, her silent log of notes, and the witness to the single shot that saved the convoy. No one followed. No one disturbed her, just her shadow stretching long on the cold cement. She pulled from her chest pocket the folded scrap of paper, its ink faded 1.7 degrees 8 mop. A number, a wind direction. A result? No applause, no medals, no photos or commendation letters from the command. But none were needed. That shell had hit its mark not a fraction off. And for her, that was enough to quietly affirm every effort, every solitary morning, every laugh behind her back. All answered. She folded the paper and tucked it back into her jacket, letting it rest near her heartbeat as it had for 2 weeks. The wind picked up. On the distant hill where the ambush once stood, only a blurred patch remained under the crescent moon. No figures, no guns, just earth silent and still. Rachel looked up, staring for a long moment, then leaned lightly against the crate's edge. In that quiet, she knew honor didn't come from titles, nor from apologies. The honor came when you acted, when no one else would, and you needed no one's approval as long as the shell hit true. Rachel Carter's story, the silent, steadfast gunner, may not be etched in history books or hailed on honor boards, but sometimes it's the unseen actions, the uncommanded choices that draw the line between survival and sacrifice, chaos and order. If you believe courage doesn't need to be loud, if you value those who quietly rise when no one else will, share this story. Let those shells hit their mark not just on the battlefield but in the hearts of every listener. Don't forget to subscribe, comment with your thoughts, and share this video with those who cherish quiet resilience. Your small click fuels the next story told in full. See you in the next tale.